Hello, everybody out there. Welcome back to the Alchemy of Abundance Virtual Summit. Today, we're talking topics around pleasure, money, and how to have more of both. I am Chris Jolly, and today I've got entrepreneur Melinda Wittstock with me. She's calling in from Santa Monica, California, and her business is Podopolo, and they are elevating the podcast ecosystem with innovation in AI and blockchain. Melinda, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm great. Chris, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me a part of the summit.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. I personally am really excited about this talk because it's a good intersection of things that I'm really interested in. I hope everybody else out there will be as interested as I am. And of course, we're going to talk abundance, feeling good, and how to mix the two with work as well. So now, Melinda, you're a five-time serial entrepreneur and a visionary innovator in media and tech. You were honored 2024's AI Pioneer of the Year by a California investment forum. Very cool. And you're the CEO and founder of Podopolo, which, as I said, is revolutionizing podcasting with AI on blockchain. It helps fans easily discover podcasters, helps podcasters grow and monetize their shows, and help businesses get a bigger return from podcast advertising. Melinda, that's a lot. First of all, tell everybody how you came up with the name, because we talked about this a little bit before we jumped on the interview. And I always find names real interesting. You can ask my partner Tilly. I'm always saying the quote from the Tao, naming is the origin of all things, because whatever you call a thing is what it ends up being. So why did you call it that? What does it mean? And what is it exactly?
Yeah, so it was way woo at the time. I was struggling with the name. I was at the height of the pandemics when really first had the idea, for Podopolo. And there's this woman who'd come on my podcast who had this whole business that she called Namology. And not numerology, but namology, which is to do with the relationship of the letters in a name, and all of that can tell you about a person. And she'd been hired by defense attorneys, prosecutors to figure out jury selection. She'd been doing this for corporations, for school boards, for all sorts of applications. And she told me a whole bunch of things about myself that weren't publicly known. There's no way she could have known just from the position of the letters in my own name. And it kind of blew my mind. So I remembered her when I was trying to come up with a name, for Podopolo. And the whole vision of Podopolo is about abundance. It's about connecting people around podcasts, being able to put learning into action from a podcast, being able to, it's gamified, to be able to win rewards and prizes and things just for doing what you already do, which is listening to podcasts, also with a dream that really wanted to be able to empower creators to support their families and the lives of their dreams just by speaking their truth into a microphone, right? So her whole process was, okay, tell me 10 things of what you want people to feel when they hear the name. Now tell me, describe 10 things about your ideal customer or stakeholder or investor, sort of all of it, and then tell me what you do. So sent all that to her. A couple of weeks later, she got back to us with a bunch of alternatives, and one of them was Podopoly, like kind of a play on Monopoly. But that was completely unworkable for us because abundance and abundance mindset is one of our highest values, along with innovation and collaboration and diversity and such. And so we played around with that. We couldn't really be like Monopoly. It's like completely fault, that's wrong. And so we adapted it to Podopolo. So that's how we got there.
Amazing. Now, what's the worst way you've ever heard anybody pronounce that?
There's Podopolo is the normal way that people sort of bisect it. It's a good conversation starter. The funniest thing is people think I'm Greek. They're like, "Are you Melinda Podopolo? Like, is this a family business or
I
whatever?"
see.
Which I think is funny. So there's all kinds of different stories around it. So like on our website on the about thing, we actually do a little dictionary, interactive dictionary about like how to pronounce it and what it means.
Super cool. Okay, now your talk is entitled Conscious Entrepreneurship, Innovating for Social Good with AI and Blockchain. So what are we going to be talking about exactly?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's lots to talk about. So, if you say AI to people, chances are they're all going to have wildly different reactions. Like some people are going to be in absolute terror and the fear of the killer robots and such, right? Other people, very legitimate concerns because, AI, like any technology, like if I held up a knife right now, it's a tool, but it's also a weapon, right? And that's true of AI. So it's how we use AI that matters. What intention that we infuse it with? What is the outcome that we want? And how can it be ethically deployed? What is the provenance of it? Like, do we know if that's a deep fake or not, right? What are all the different things? So like it brings with it tremendous potential to in its best incarnation to really allow people to live the lives of their dreams and be truly creative and all of that, because a lot of the sort of the housekeeping is done by the AI, right? That's
Yeah.
best case scenario, but it can also be an overlord, right? And so where we come at it is how can we infuse our AI with the intention that we want it to have and operate very transparently and ethically. So that's part of the equation.
Gotcha. And now I would guess that's too where the blockchain comes in, correct?
Yes, it is. So we really believe that blockchain is one of the key elements of assuring the AI technology works. I mean, everything from its provenance, like the transparency of it, knowing, say, in the context of a podcast or any kind of creator or any kind of social media post, what's real and what's not, right? Um, who created it? Right? Who owns it? All these sorts of things. So there's a lot of applications for blockchain kind of in that area. But blockchain also allows for interoperability and decentralization, which I think is also important in the context of AI. Right now, you have this, because it's so expensive with
Hmm.
all the GPUs you need and all of that, you've got three companies that basically own 2/3 of all of AI, actually, probably more than that. Like all the 2/3 of all investment into AI companies worldwide have come from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, right? And
Hmm.
so all their board seats were kind of like the same six people on all these startup, right? So it's very, very centralized in the hands of a few with the large language models with very little transparency and such. And then there are a lot of people really taking it and using those models, but also creating other models and other proprietary things, not obviously at that same scale, but the elegance is applying it, ethically. And so blockchain, given its decentralized and interoperable nature, offers a way to allow a more decentralized and transparent AI world. I'm getting really philosophical here because there's a lot of debate about how that's best done. And there are a lot of companies like us who are taking that approach. And it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But the more we can come at it in a way that AI actually empowers people, the better off humanity will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope it's doing our dishes and not making us do their dishes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, now Melinda, why podcasting?
Well, I became a podcaster after I sold my previous business. And I started a podcast that I wish I had had as a female founder, tech entrepreneur, where, 30 years on, women are still only getting 2% of the venture capital money, even though all the stats show we return on capital better, we have bigger chances of succeeding, all kinds of stats that really support female founders. So there's just this kind of like crazy disconnect. And I also just wanted to pay it forward and really catalyze an ecosystem where women were really showing up for each other in a meaningful way from a place of abundance to actually, mentor each other, buy from each other, invest in each other and such. So I just like started a podcast, how hard can this be, right? And I came at
Famous
it
last words.
right. But it's a typical entrepreneurial thing to do, right? I'll just build the plane as I fly, it'll all be fine, no problem, right? And I was coming at it having created Financial Times Television, for the Financial Times newspaper, and growing that audience to 30 million people, on CNBC. I'd created award-winning shows for the BBC, documentaries for Channel 4 in Britain. I was an award-winning content creator and journalist, and a television host as well. Okay. So I was coming at it with that expertise, as well as technological, marketing expertise, financial expertise, all of that. And it was still hard. Okay. So it was kind of, wait, just a minute here. So it was hard to find and engage your audience, and really, really hard to monetize content. In fact, 98% of podcasters don't qualify for advertising, which is insane. Like, it's just a broken market. Podcasts are something like 22% of all internet traffic. Like, think about that for a moment, right? That's huge. More than a fifth of all eyeballs or ears or whatever are on podcasts in the entire internet, but less than 2% of the digital ad spend. So there are all these disconnects. And I found what I was experiencing, where I got kind of crazy. I ended up with like 5 side hustles just to support my podcast. And this is like really upside down. Like, this is not making any sense. I started talking to other podcasters, and they were all experiencing the same things. And so I thought, I wonder about the fan experience, what's going on there. And then so many fans, just podcast listeners, love podcasts, but they were struggling to find the right podcast for them. And also just connect with other people, like, who of my friends are listening to what podcasts? I want to discuss them, or I want to put what I'm learning into action somehow. How can that be easier? And then I started talking to advertisers who love the authenticity and the intimacy of the media, but we're lacking the data to kind of figure out where to place their ads to get a return, or to assure brand safety, or any of these things. So it was like this broken ecosystem. And so because my background is innovating at the intersection of media and technology, really since 2009, with the beginnings of AI, with like unsupervised machine learning and natural language processing and all these things, I thought, okay, I can solve this. Like, I looked around and nobody else was doing it. And what can I do to figure out how to kind of solve all these disconnects in this fragmented but really fast growing market? And I saw the way that AI could be applied, saw the way that blockchain could be applied, saw how we could make podcasting more social, and just really repair the disconnect by connecting, fans to the right podcast, podcasts to the right fans, advertisers to the right podcasts, and, et cetera, right? So that's really where it came from. And it came from, like, a lot of great entrepreneurial endeavors. The best ones come from having walked through it personally yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Amazing. Now I'm going to ask you to tie this, circle back around and tie it all back into conscious entrepreneurship and what it has to do with an abundance mindset.
Okay. Well, first off, if you want therapy, just become an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's going to confront you with every single limiting belief that you have ever had, or any time or any way that you felt unworthy, or you have a money mindset issue, or you have stuff. And we all have this, because in that time between like birth and like about 7, 8 years old, all the beliefs that we take on about ourselves and make real and make stories about aren't even ours. You know what I mean? Like, they come from parents, schools, now social media, all this stuff, right? And so we believe all these stories about us that aren't really real. So when you do have the temerity and courage and just daring and grit to choose to be an entrepreneur and choose this life, which is not easy, you will be 100% confronted at every step of the way by these kinds of mindset issues. And I'm not unlike that. Like, I think just what it takes to grow and scale 5 businesses and innovate on the bleeding edge of different technologies and such, and to do that as a woman, when women don't get funded, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, just like degrees of difficulty, you have a choice. Like, either you're going to kind of confront these things within yourself and learn and grow, or not. And I think that, combined with the fact that I've always been a mission-driven entrepreneur, like, I'm not like, there are faster and easier and more sure ways to make money.
Yeah.
than being an entrepreneur. I guess like a high degree of risk, like be a corporate lawyer, you know what I mean? If you really want money, you know what I mean? And because very few get to that kind of unicorn status and such, right? And so I've always done this for a reason, like the social impact, like really being of service, really uplifting lives. In the case of podcasting, I think how can podcasting and how can Podopolo's contribution raise the global vibration, raise the frequency of the planet? Like that's the kind of thing that motivates me, right? So I think the intersection of both of those things, that it's been the entrepreneurial journey for me has been a conscious journey, and it continues to be, you know, from everything about just coming at it from a place of gratitude, like even for the things where you get your head kicked in by something like you can't control, or like just all the things like I don't know, a long list of all that, you know, crappy things that can kind of happen along the way, some of them of your own making, a lot of them not, and how you handle that. So with gratitude, with intention, with visualization, with all these things. And then also with things like, you know, because for mental health, for entrepreneurs, you know, it is challenging. So things like, you know, different variations of different types of plant medicine, you know, ayahuasca and all these things, I mean, have all been part of my journey. Yoga turned, you know, and meditation, and like I have this whole toolkit. Okay. And there was a certain point where I realized that abundance in particular was critical to this whole conscious journey and how that actually applied to entrepreneurship. Because when we come at things in terms of scarcity, if we're thinking about the world and the problems with the world, so many of those things are rooted in scarcity, and fear being a big byproduct or, you know, best friend of scarcity,
Mhm.
and all the things that go wrong when people are operating from that place, right? And all the businesses that become sort of exploitative of their people, or where team cultures don't work well because, you know, people are of this mindset that, oh, if he or she succeeds, then I can't. So like, which makes for, you know, a terrible work environment, and not conducive to success in entrepreneurship, where you really have to align and motivate a team all in the same direction, for instance, right?
Yeah.
And all the different ways in which, you know, that zero sum game, it really just doesn't advance, you know, our society. So on a personal level, coming from an abundance mindset, very, very simply, you realize that there's plenty of money to go around, right? There's plenty of resources to go around. There's plenty of all of this, right? If someone else has it, doesn't mean that you can't. So just really understanding that at its core and at its principle, we live in an abundant world. It's how you're showing up in it and the energy that you're bringing to it in terms of what you're able to attract and manifest, and really who you're being, as much or even more, in fact, than what you're actually doing. So when
Mhm.
you take that and you apply it to a company, as we do, specifically, we focus on operationalizing our values. So take something like abundance. So what does that mean? So our team really is rewarded for helping somebody else out, for like literally lifting as we climb, which is the whole hashtag of my podcast, Wings of Inspired Business, where I'm trying to get the whole women's ecosystem for women to do that for each other, right? So genuinely helping that. What does it mean for customers? What does it mean for clients? Deal structures, that everybody wins. That you can have, and as Podopolo does, it has a, rather than looking at the competitive ecosystem in a pure competitive thing, like we have to beat Spotify or we have to beat so-and-so. Spotify can be a customer as well. We look at it as a very cooperative kind of environment, where we have something that it doesn't really matter. Like, as long as we're advancing, as long as we're sticking by our mission of lifting fans, lifting podcasters, helping brands and businesses get their messages across, you know, for the betterment of the world, as long as we're doing that, it doesn't really matter how. Like, we don't have to, right? Like and it's a play that actually, and an approach that actually results in a more abundant business, because there's an abundance of opportunities, resources, and all of that when you choose to play in that way. So this is a very long answer, but it's very personal to me, but it also is necessary to find a way to actually make it real, for other people and really show the difference.
Yeah, Melinda, I think it's a great answer. You dove into so much there that's of value, and I really agree with you that the business is really just a reflection of the business owner. And if you
Yeah.
want to learn about yourself, having a business is one of the quickest ways to find out the things that you've kind of not been paying attention to or trying to, suppress and push down. Now, coming from a personal perspective, like for you in business, what are some of those maybe abundance slash money mindset issues that you may have uncovered as you went through your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh gosh, how long do you have? I mean, a lot. I have kind of a weird upbringing because my in the first 6 years of my life, my family was wildly wealthy.
Okay.
My father was Canada's top stockbroker with offices in London, New York, Toronto, Montreal, Tokyo. I mean, he did the Coca-Cola IPO, right? Okay. So he was a big guy. And then he lost everything. It's a crazy story. His partner embezzled from him. In today's dollars, something like $200 million. I mean,
Wow.
just crazy. And then skipped off to Venezuela. And back in the day, um, brokerage companies weren't like they are today. They were actually unlimited partnerships. So it would push you into personal bankruptcy, which it did as a result of this, even though my father had done nothing wrong, which meant that he could not continue to operate as a broker and lost his business. And he was, not really young anymore. And it was my mom left him, all kinds of, shit went down in the family, right? Okay, so here I am, I'm like 6 years old. And it's taken me some years to kind of unpack this because on one hand, those first 6 years, I kind of understood what it was like to be wealthy. Okay. Um, and on the other hand, the minute it all went away, it was suddenly, there was all this shame about it because my parents had all this shame of failure. And then I was different from all the other kids. And so like, I didn't really fit in. And like, so there was this, I think what I had to unpack for myself was kind of, I finally like boiled it down to this kind of like unworthiness,
Mhm.
or there's something wrong with having money. And like, no, money does not buy happiness, right? Like a whole series of things because there were arguments about it, parents split over, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And then this weird thing of just not feeling like you fit in because it was such a weird kind of like black or white, like from, right? Like it was kind
Hmm.
of crazy. So like I think everybody has their version of that with money or with other issues or whatever. Um, that you kind of whatever's going on as a little kid, you internalize that. So it took me a long time to figure out why I could manifest money, but I couldn't necessarily for a while earlier in my life, I couldn't really hold on to it. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I was
I do know
like
what you
my
mean.
20s, like I would spend as much, or I was just really generous and like give it away, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Right? That kind of thing. And it was and it was really interesting. It was like I didn't feel worthy of like having it. Yeah. Um, and so working out all of that, it's been quite a journey, right? And
Yeah, of
then
course.
getting to the ultimate place, and this is also tied to abundance, where you realize that money is not a thing. It's a tool. It's a marker of the exchange value of things. That's like all it is.
Yeah.
But we think it's something that we have to have and like go and like, but it's literally just an exchange. So if you're depending on, and it's an energy as well,
Yeah.
like, right? So having the right kind of energy about this, and again, coming back to abundance, right? And coming back to your own self-worth. Do you deserve it? Like, why would you not deserve it?
Yeah, it's so interesting because anytime I examine these kind of things with entrepreneurs or just people in general, whether it's around finances or not, it almost always comes back to that self-worth piece.
Oh,
And
always.
I
Always.
always find it's the biggest, like, number one thing that people struggle with. And even when they have all these symptoms that you don't think are self-worth, once you get the bigger picture, you're like, oh, they just don't feel like they deserve it.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too, is for a long time, the other symptom for me was just really hard work. Like it kind of, and also the types of businesses I was creating. I mean, they've all been hard businesses to do, right? I could like created, they're all hard in their own way, right? But some are easier than like
Yeah.
changing a whole ecosystem or like innovating at the cutting edge of technology. Like there's a lot of other things you could do that have like less head damage than like all the ones. So everything I've done or wanted to do, they've been hard problems. Like back in 2010, figuring out, oh, I know, with like probabilistic models and natural language processing and unsupervised machine learning, we can figure out the veracity of crowdsourced content. Okay. Which like I was doing. Yeah. I mean, that's cutting edge.
Yeah.
So so one of the ways it manifested for me is like, it has to be hard. I have to work hard. Right. And I still have a little bit about that, but like I think age is helping me a little bit because it's going, I don't want to have to work that hard. And often, things that you think you have to do, other people can do, or you like literally, like you don't have to do it all. Right. And this is particularly a big thing for women, because I think a lot of women are just used to being, just for thousands of years, there's people who've done all the other things. The guy went, with and got the wildebeest and brought it back. And the women were doing everything else, right? So this is still very much in our psyches of getting out of our own way in that sense, and really understanding leverage, and like really focusing on the things that only you can do, right?
Yeah.
Delegating the rest. Yeah.
Okay, now I know that when these kind of self-worth issues pop up, it can be very, it's just like, challenging. We get triggered emotionally. How do you kind of, when that comes up for you, what do you do to move through it? And like, what's maybe a tool you can suggest to help people connect to feeling good so that they're focused more on, allowing in the things and feeling worthy and calling in that abundance?
Yeah. A big lesson for me, I think I used to do much earlier on. I used to do the kind of toxic positivity thing where I'd just be like, I'm good, affirmations and whatnot, and I would deny the feeling. So it was almost like pushing it deeper
Hmm.
rather than letting it go. Like literally allowing myself to feel what I was feeling, and then being able to say, okay, so this isn't even yours. You can just let this go, right? It's not even yours. Just let it go, right? Like feel it, acknowledge it, uh, even thank it, do whatever you have to do, but literally let it pass through you, because otherwise the trapped energy is the stuff that leads to resentment and physical illness and all these sorts of things. So you have to let it pass. So that's one thing. I think it really it's always a process. All these things, you think you've solved them, and then they come back in some other way, in some incarnation. It's sort of like the universe saying, are you sure you've solved it? So it's an ongoing process. So what's the most vital thing is just a very simple thing, awareness. Just being present, knowing that it's happening, not papering over it, not denying it, not doing any of those things, but just like, oh, isn't this interesting? This has come up again. Okay. So obviously there's some more cobwebs. Okay. I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to, that kind of thing. The other part of that practice for me, and I'm reasonably consistent in it. And when I am consistent in it, things work really well for me. So I don't know why I wouldn't be consistent in it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So, but I'm human. So is at the end of the day, actually acknowledging myself. So like I have a gratitude practice, and you can be grateful for all kinds of things that you don't even control. I can be grateful for the sunshine today in Santa Monica because it's been cloudy for a month. I can be grateful for my dog, all these things, or a friend or whatever.
Hmm.
My food, that kind of thing. The acknowledgement though is personal. It's something that you did. It's something like that. And so I started adding that to my gratitude practice at night. several months ago. And it's actually game changing. And what's really funny about it, and this will tell you a lot, I would have these days where I just do all these things, like do some big deal or like get a new investor or something like that. And I'd get to the end of the day and I couldn't think of anything to acknowledge myself with. I'm like, I don't know, what did I do today? Right.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And so, I really kind of had to stick with it. So that's really important. I think the other thing important is in the morning when you first wake up, just creating space and that, whether it's the Hal Elrod Miracle Morning or some other derivation of that, to like get your body moving, clear your mind, journal, meditate, I don't know, set intentions for the day.
Mhm.
My intention is to come at the world with an open heart today, be gracious to people, or my intention is to usher forth the financial abundance that I want in my life, whatever that is, and just to really do that. So it's a whole series of things. But at the end of the day, and just being aware and being aware when your inner bully voice is talking to you, and just realize that it all it is trying to discourage you, sow doubt, all these things. And it's like, no, that's not me. I'm letting that go.
Yeah, it's just trying to keep you safe by keeping you small, and you have to realize that although you might have thought that kept you safe in the past, it's not going to help you grow now.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing as a child. Because as a child, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to hide, right? I'm going to make myself smaller, right? Because it literally is like literally some sort of primordial sort of thing where you feel sort of your mind tricks yourself into thinking you're safer if you're playing a small game.
Yeah, I mean, even animals do it when they try to hide from predators. They shrink down and try to disappear, and we still do that as kids for sure, and as adults
As
sometimes.
adults, we do it. Like
Yeah.
so many women, for instance, will find ways of not getting their website fixed because they've got to lose 10 pounds before they can, right? Or like it shows up in like perfectionism, which is procrastination, in fact.
Mhm.
Thinking that you have to be perfect, that deep in that is an unworthiness
Yeah.
as well. So like understanding the symptoms of what the like getting to the root of this. And it always comes down to, fear, right? Like, oh my God, like, or imposter syndrome, like, oh, if I really go out there, everybody will know I'm a fraud. You know what I mean? Just right. Just all these things. So we all have it. Like, we all have it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, anyway, so coming at it with a bit of humor, like I've sort of learned to laugh at myself a little bit because I do think it's actually kind of funny the more I go on this journey. Um, like just our humanity is inherently funny. So
Yeah, you got to be able to laugh at yourself, otherwise you're never going to make it out alive.
exactly. So I find myself laughing a lot, so
Excellent.
that's good.
Now, Melinda, I want to take you back to a time in your business, whether it was this one or some other time in your entrepreneurial journey, when you really felt like you were living your purpose, you were firing on all cylinders, in a state of flow, making tons of money. Can you describe a time like that to us?
Oh yeah. So actually my first business, it's really funny the for a serial entrepreneur because the first business is sort of weirdly easier because you're so ignorant. Like you,
Yeah.
you have like no idea like what could go wrong, right? So you're just kind of fearless. So, like, of course,
Uh-huh.
and so, and this was an interesting time because you would think this would be challenging, but it was actually quite joyful. So, my first business was Capital News Connection, and it was born shortly after 9/11 because everybody was talking about our democracy. It was so important to defend. Yes, it is, by the way, like vote anyway. So, our democracy is really important. It's important for business. It's important for everything, our rights, all of it, right? But at that time, I was like, well, journalism really sucks at covering politics because it's just not relevant to people's daily lives.
Yeah.
So how can I make it relevant, and kind of seized on the phrase, all politics is local. And so I created a new way to cover Capitol Hill and K Street and White House and whatnot that took decisions being made nationally and really looked deep into the local impacts and the issues and figured out a way to create a team that could do that at scale, like essentially personalizing at scale. It's like a really hard thing to do. And
Mhm.
especially for most journalists are pretty ego focused and they're not necessarily team players. So I really had to train journalists from scratch, like the business is built on like interns, many of whom now, one went on to be Katie Couric's producer, one runs Face of the Nation and CBS, someone else is like really high up at the Discovery. They all started as interns with
Wow.
me. So that's like a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
Train all these people up because I had to change their mindset about journalism to be able to do this business. But anyway, raised the money for the company, started, but in that window of getting going just before launch, I got pregnant. And so I was like building the business before launch and then gave birth. And then Sydney was 6 weeks old when we launched. And I literally loved it though. Like I was just doing everything. Like, I don't know. I was like crazy superwoman. I was managed to like, breastfeed in the US Capitol every 2 hours, like run payroll, kind of sign new clients, kind of do stories, kind of hire people, train them, all of this kind of stuff. So year two, we'd grown from 10 radio stations to 300 radio stations, a whole bunch of television stations, newspapers. I'd taken a team in the first year, there were three of us. In the second year, there were 10 of us. We were doing extremely well. That year, we won, I think, 17 Edward R. Murrow Awards. We beat CNN's Katrina coverage for the Joan Barone Public Policy award, and nobody had ever heard of us. And it was at the correspondence dinner, and the award goes to, and everyone's like, who? So like, I don't know, I felt on top of the world. I was kind of exhausted, but I was just managing, like being a mom with this business, kind of this and that. And I wasn't making the huge amount of money because I, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I was paying other people kind of like ahead of myself. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I was accruing it. And I was doing well, and I ultimately sold that business. But it was what was great about it, and I think when I look back on it now, and I was really living my truth and my mission, right? In terms of just in so many ways. Like it was just very aligned, just like how I really feel about Podopolo as well, where it's just like I can't not do this. And I was genuinely uplifting and changing lives, right? Genuinely having a big impact, not only on the people that we were, reporting to. And the way we know this is we created all these interactive tech tools that had citizens all across the country asking questions of their lawmakers and getting answers, which we were fact checking and then, doing this whole thing. We had like a 3 million daily audience,
Wow.
daily, like regularly, which was pretty cool. So, and I felt good. I felt like everything was just, kind of, in the right place and good. And I've had that in other times too. And then there were other times in that business where the shit hit the fan. Like we had an accountant that's our accountant stole from us.
Hmm.
you know, Actually, she ended up going to jail. Like that was pretty tense to walk through that. And like, there's all kinds of things that happen and go wrong. Other businesses that I, started that were doing really well, but never got funded and just couldn't go.
Hmm.
Which, there was a lot of grief and mourning about. And then other ones that are just like, for whatever reason, sometimes they're just really easy and they go and they have a an energy about them and they just work. And then other ones just are hard, or you feel like, oh my God, or they go through periods.
Yeah, it's real interesting because like you said, for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's about that impact. It's about doing something they're passionate about, not necessarily picking the easiest thing to be in business, right? I could probably make easy six figures doing power washing, but I have no interest in that. To me, like, yeah, people need clean power wash stuff or whatever, but I don't feel like that's the impact that I'm here to make in people's lives. And so a lot of times we do kind of choose these mission-driven things, which then make having the business itself a little bit harder.
Yeah, it's true. It depends on like what kind of rocks your boat. Like I'm sort of endlessly curious. I love to learn. I love to see the impact of what I'm doing, that actually like you actually are helping people, right?
Yeah.
I love just the creative innovation of it all. right? Doing something new that someone hasn't thought, or connecting the dots in a way that nobody else has thought of. I don't know, whatever. I can't not do it, right? I just like, I don't know. I can't I remember I had jobs when I was a teenager. I was sort of unemployable, I guess, So
Yep, I think that's the way a lot of that for entrepreneurs totally is. You do it because you have to. You're compelled to. Something inside you drives you to do it because otherwise we'd probably pick something else and something easier.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Now, Melinda, I could talk all day with you about podcasting and blockchain and entrepreneurship, but we're bumping up against the end of our time. Now, you have a free gift for everyone. It's called Grow Your Podcast. The link for that is down below this video for everybody to check out. Can you tell us where we're going to get there?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it's really a free entry point for podcasters. One of the things that our AI is doing is it's parsing through hundreds of millions of episodes in real time to actually understand what's going on topically on those shows, but also it learns a lot about the audience in terms of what they're interested in and, and their behavior and such. And so we're really literally a matchmaker. We're matchmaking podcasters to the right audiences that we already know are interested in their shows, but otherwise would struggle to discover them on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, right? So it's not, and it's discovery for fans as well. So it's helping podcasters grow their audience, but also giving podcasters audience analytics about what's actually going on with their shows and with actionable recommendations and the beginnings of ad placement and such. And then there's other tiered offers that do require payment, but like you can have a big impact with our free offer. So that's just the best way to get started.
Awesome. Love it. Everybody go ahead and check that out. I've been Chris Jolly with Melinda Wittstock of Podopolo. This is the Alchemy of Abundance Virtual Summit, and we will see you on the next speaker. Melinda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. It was a lot of fun. I love doing this kind of thing. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We hope everybody out there watching loved it as well, and we will catch you on the next talk.
Great.
Ciao.